العوافي يا جماعة الخير، وأهلا وسهلا بكم بحلقة جديدة من تعال تمشى مع براين. So this would be episode 3 and الموضوع اللي حنحكي فيه اليوم هو ستار وورز، أو إذا بدنا نترجمها على العربي مظبوط حروب النجوم. So for those of you in the audience or who are listening اللي ما بيعرفوا شو هو Star Wars, so Star Wars is basically, well, it started out as a trilogy, a series of films, beginning with Star Wars: A New Hope. It was directed and produced by a great man, named George Lucas, who also did marvelous works like Indiana Jones and I think a lot more movies as well. But his most notable work would have to be Star Wars. And so, long story short, I don't want to delve in too much into what Star Wars is, because I'd rather have you guys get a taste of what it is and then fulfill that curiosity that you guys might have to actually watch the movie or the series of movies and actually enjoy them themselves, and that way you get to see what are the things that I'm talking about. So in general, Star Wars is a movie about the Force. So the Force is this element that's found in every living thing, which if you're trained hard enough you can understand how to use it. Now there's a bipolarity to using the Force. So there's the Jedi and the Jedi Council on one side, which are kind of like the good guys, all in white, all in beige. And then you've got the Sith Lords, who are the dark side and the bad side, which are also cladded in black and red, and it's very evident from the visuals. And basically Star Wars itself is the fight that goes on between both of these sides. And you're looking at it from a perspective of a lot of different characters, the main of which would be someone like Luke Skywalker, who is a protagonist for the first 3 movies, and then you've got Anakin Skywalker, who's the protagonist for the other 3 movies. Now, like I was saying, it's a trilogy. It's made up of 6 movies, or at least that's the original kind of Star Wars intent. Since then, the franchise has grown. Now you've got Lego Star Wars, you've got Star Wars toys, you've got Star Wars series, you've got Star Wars video games. So much has expanded from just this single enterprise, which was the initial 6 movies. Now, before we start delving into the movies themselves, I think I'd like to give flowers, as they say, to George Lucas. And again, who am I to give flowers to George Lucas? But he did something throughout these 6 movies that he had that kind of changed cinema or movies in general, and started propagating the idea of being able to create a sequel and then a trilogy and something like this. And that genre was created because of Star Wars. And one of the most important things that George Lucas did until today is taught in so many universities is the fact that originally his script had the movies listed as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's the order of the movies that he was meant to transition through, so that the story carries on in all 6 of those movies. But when George Lucas looked at the script and looked at what he had in mind for what he saw his vision of Star Wars to be, what he wanted it to be, he noticed that for the first 3 parts, the world had not reached the level of technology and scientific advancement to be able to provide the best possible outcome for these 3 movies. So what he decided to do was to flip the script, and therefore originally issued out the movies in a reverse order. So the movies actually came out in cinemas in the order of 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. And in order to do that, he first of all determined that 4, 5, 6 were movies that require low tech, and they don't require the amount of CGI and computer imagery that was required by the first three. Sorry. And also, it's because he was able to pinpoint one singular moment or one singular event in his whole story and use that to pivot the story. So what happened was, instead of you seeing the normal progression of how the movie is supposed to be, so going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, he found a moment where he was like, okay, wait, I can chop this in half and move 4, 5, 6 to the front and put 1, 2, 3 in the back, and it would create a phenomenon which was called the wow effect, the jaw drop effect, which you get once you see how the story unravels in this unorthodox kind of arrangement that George Lucas has. So الزلمة قد منه مخ اجى طلع قال يا خيي انا عندي هول الاشياء هيدي انا هيك شايف الفيلم بده يصير. انا شايف هيك بده يصير ببارت 1 2 3 وشايف هيك بده يصير ببارت 4 5 6. بس خي الكمبيوترات اللي موجودين اليوم ما عم بيلحقوا لحتى او ما فيني يلحقوا لحتى انا قادر اعمل ال 1 2 3 اللي انا بدي اعمله. سو ليه ما بجيب انا ال 4 5 6 يلي ما بدهم هالقد افورت وبحطهم هني بالاول وبقلب القصه بطريقه لحتى تقدر تمشي حتى لو قطشتوا للموفي بالنص. So that's one of the things that till today I don't think there has been a series of movies that has replicated this phenomenon this well, where you were able to split this story at a point, flip it over, and still maintain that you get an amazing story that still correlates with one another. I think if there's a movie that comes close to this, or the idea of shifting between time zones in the story, it would have to be a movie like Memento, which also a movie that I would recommend everyone that's listening to this to watch because it's a masterpiece itself. But putting that aside, one of the things that's also very nice and makes Star Wars what it is its soundtrack. So everyone knows the dun 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 dun. Like it's, you've heard it. You've heard the Darth Vader or the Imperial March, which is like dun 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 dun. So you listen to all of this, and you might not be a Star Wars fan. You might not appreciate what it is, but you know this music. You've heard this kind of dum 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 dum, and instinctively, without even watching the movie, without even seeing what it is, that tone gives you that evil imperial march, which is the name of the song. The song or the music is called the Imperial March, and so that was all because of a man named John Williams, who is a genius composer, someone who has written scores for a lot of movies. He's won a lot of Oscars, a lot of awards, and he's just amazing at what he does. And to have him as an addition on this movie that was already so great, it's just the cherry on top. And a lot of people, when I ask them or when we talk about Star Wars or when I bring up the subject of Star Wars, because I'm such a fucking huge fan, بيطلعوا بيقولوا لي انه شو هذا للاولاد الصغار انه ليزرز وسيوف بتضوي ولايت سيبرز whatever it is and it's just for kids, and I'm like, but it's not. See, there's this saying that you always hear, which is don't judge a book by its cover. And what I ask you to do in the scenario of Star Wars is don't judge it by its aesthetic. Now, granted, for someone like me, laser blasters and laser swords and spaceships is amazing and it's fucking cool. But a lot of people don't see it that way, and that's how the world is. But I want you to think of this when you're delving into Star Wars, that all of this aesthetic is an addition to how amazing Star Wars is, because the genuine thing that really makes Star Wars what it is its story. And now I don't want to start bursting bubbles or providing spoilers for people that haven't watched the movies and might get intrigued to watch them after this. But a long story short, Star Wars itself is not about lightsabers. It's not about spaceships. It's not about blasters. It's about a father. It's the story of redemption of a father by his son and by his children. So when you start to see it that way and realize that maybe if I just forego the aesthetic, I understand it's a big part of the movie, but if you focus on the characters and the story and where genuinely George Lucas wanted to lead you as an audience, how he wanted you to experience each character, how you grow with each character and how you joy with each one and have your heart broken with each of them as well. And that itself is just so well done. Because again, George Lucas was genuinely a man and he created this. It's not like he copied this from somewhere. He actually created the whole identity of Star Wars, which kind of adds to what George Lucas is and how well he did on this movie of his. Now, like I said, this movie was not only a pioneer in the whole art of cinematography when it came out, but it introduced, which later on was adopted by a lot of movies, which was the idea that a movie doesn't have to end, or the story of a movie doesn't have to end after 2 hours or one movie section, but can be carried across multiple sections and therefore have the story be transitioned over more than one movie. Because sometimes, I don't know, 2 hours isn't enough to put in all the information that you need and to provide the story that you need. So that precedent was actually set or in some way reinforced as well by George Lucas and the whole Star Wars trilogy itself. Now, I am a man, like I said, that loves lightsabers, loves the idea of laser blasters. Spaceships, fuck yeah, I want more. But that's not what makes me a fan of Star Wars. I've watched a lot of sci-fi, and there's weapons that are cooler, there's spaceships that look more awesome, there's set designs that are way better, but yet still, Star Wars for me will always be number one because of its story, because of how the story unravels. And when you do, if you've never experienced Star Wars and you're new to it, my recommendation to you is to genuinely experience it the way the artist, wanted you to experience it, by watching it 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. So it's once you wrap your head around what he's done, you start to realize how amazing of a task it is and how amazing of an achievement it is that he has done as well. But also, one of the things that I love about Star Wars, and again, this has something to do with the story, but this won't spoil the story for anyone. But Star Wars, like a lot of movies today, tackles the debate or kind of the ongoing battle between good and evil. So you have the good side, which are the Jedi. They use the Force to help people, to save people, to heal. Their lightsabers or their laser swords, if you don't know what a lightsaber is, are usually green, blue, white. They're usually clad in beige and white robes, so they embody the image of good. and of justice. And on the other side, you have the Sith, who are the users of the dark side of the Force. And their lightsabers are usually red. Their colors and their complexion is usually very ominous: black, red, dark gray, like colors that kind of represent that evil intent. And so Star Wars itself shows you kind of the battle. It's the battle between good and evil, which is kind of the center of a lot of movies. But one of the things that makes Star Wars different is that even the good side and the bad side, they both in this movie acknowledge that they cannot exist by themselves. So the theme of the movie is not, or the theme of the movie is not centered about good defeating evil, but it's about good and evil providing the balance that's needed, which is, they refer to it in the movie as bringing balance to the Force. So the idea is that they both acknowledge that one cannot exist without the other. And that's amazing, because it kind of in some way represents the duality of life, or life that we live in. So for example, if someone is going about life expecting it all to be good, all to be happy, he is misled, because the reality of life is not that way. Life is up and down. Life is good and evil. And one does not exist without the other, because how could it? So if there was no bad, how would you know what good is? And if there was no good, how would you know what bad is? So in order for one to exist, the other must be there as well. And so what Star Wars did was it showed you was that the point of life, or of the Jedi, or of the Sith, or of anyone in that universe, was to bring balance to that Force, rather than have it be overpowered by one side or completely destroyed by the other. Because you cannot have it. And you look at civilizations today around the world, yin and yang, there's always representations of the fact that life is consisted of both good and evil. And the only way one can exist is by the other being there. And so that was the nice thing about, or this was the amazing thing about Star Wars. إنه الزلمة إجا قال لك يا خيي واقع الحياة هو مش إنه كله منيح ولا كله قبيح. لازم تتعلم إنه الحياة تبعك هي منيح وقبيح. وأنت أفعالك, your actions, is what determines which one outweighs in the balance. So that's where again Star Wars comes in with their Jedi, or their good side, showing you, which usually the good side always kind of emboldens or embraces the idea of heroism, self-sacrifice, giving, providing help to the society, just someone that's good in nature. So all the good attributes are embodied in one, which are the the Jedi, and then all the bad attributes are attributed, or actually are placed into one other category, which is the Sith. And what you can do is you can decide. That's what Star Wars shows you, is that the Force itself is the same, both in the good side and the dark side. And what you have the power is the power to decide how to use it. So it pushes the idea that you see these evil bad guys and these good guys that are fighting them. You could be that good guy if you decide to instill that thought in you and bring that power out by being able to side on the good side. And so it kind of, in some way or another, shows you that there is both good and evil in this world. And one cannot exist without the other, because the intent is to have it balanced rather than completely defeated. And so what you have control of is where your actions fall. do your actions fall in the good side or do they fall in the bad side? And that's kind of also one of the things that I think is amazing about Star Wars, is that it shows you this duality. But not only that, one of the main things about Star Wars is that one certain character in that Star Wars, they call this in cinema as a character arc, as in how that kind of character develops. And so in that scenario, we have one character who will remain unnamed because, again, no spoilers, whose arc starts as good and it grows as good, and then eventually it turns to bad and it stays bad, and then it eventually ends up good again. So it shows you that even with this duality in the world today, being evil or being good is not a certainty. It's not a permanent thing. It's something that you thrive for and you keep working for. So you could be good, something happens and you do a mistake, but that doesn't make the mistake and that intent define you for the rest of your life. Because with the proper willpower and with the proper kind of intent, you can flip the script and you can turn back to the good side. So that's what intrigues me the most about Star Wars, is the fact that not only is it about the duality of life and that it's good versus evil, but also because it emphasizes or shows you the point that it's not one action that kind of determines where you fall on this scale, but it's on the larger scale of your life, how many actions were good and how many actions were bad. And therefore, you're not kind of labeled as a Sith Lord or a Jedi based on one action, but it's about, on the cumulative scale, where do you fall? So that is also introduced by Star Wars. And like I said in the beginning, it's a story about redemption. So the idea to be redeemed for something that you would consider is never redeemable. But that's not the case, because everything, no matter how bad, can always be redeemed in some way or another. But the final thing I would love to say about why I like Star Wars, or why I like sci-fi in general, is because I get into a lot of debates, talks, whatever it is, with people going like, oh, Star Wars this, Star Wars that. Yeah, but like it's sci-fi, it's not real. Well, okay. I'm not saying it's real, but I'm also not saying that it's not real. Because I want to take a look at this from a completely distant standpoint. Very scientific. No emotions at all. So we're claiming that Star Wars is sci-fi, or something like the Force doesn't exist, based on the information we have, correct? We're looking at the Earth, we're looking at what we've discovered till now, and we think that it's not possible. Okay, sure. But it's not possible with what you know. But maybe somewhere down the line in the future, where we discover ways to travel, fast travel between planets, that we arrive to a planet that has evolved differently, that has like intelligent beings on it that work differently, and they've figured out how to use something like the Force. So my point is that I understand that at present it's probably 99% made up, and it's no way that can happen, and it's fantasy. Sure, but I always leave that 1% because we don't know what we don't know. So how can I claim that this doesn't exist if I haven't discovered and learned about everything, that exists? So what's the point? The point is that it still could be real. and maybe in a galaxy far, far away, which for those of you who are new is the tagline of Star Wars. So every Star Wars movie starts with in a galaxy far, far away, and then music starts, credits start rolling in, and then the movie starts. So in a galaxy far, far away, having the Force and Jedi and Sith and whatever it is could be real. It doesn't necessarily have to be fantasy. بس على كل, this was kind of the debate or the topic of today. I have a huge love for Star Wars, and I hope that at least listening to this would get some people who've never watched Star Wars before to give it a go, maybe give it a second go as well, and just keep in mind that it's not about what it looks like. It's more about the genuine story that's behind it all. And with that, بقولكم يا جماعة كتر خيركم، شكرا لانضمامكم معنا بهيدي المشوة الحلوة as we كزدر in Oban, and till next time، وشكرا وهيك.